Hi guys. In the last video, we were talking about the demise of Instagram TV, and I was talking about the kind of money that's involved in short video formats and just video content in general, right? So, just taking a look at some of the major players and in the world market, and the amount of money that's involved and how much they actually spend to acquire a customer, it becomes pretty clear as to why it's very difficult for you to have, parallel streams, on the same, I guess, genre or, type of service, right? If you look at, the world market, the major players when it comes to video content are obviously, YouTube by default because by far they have the most number of users. I think they have over 2 billion, customers. But then when it comes to, video streaming services, Netflix is definitely the king for now, where, they have about 195 to 200 million subscribers. And I think by far they spend the most amount of money every year on content itself. And we're talking about, $17 billion, where they're spending annually on all their content. Then, of course, you have Amazon Prime, you have Disney, you have Apple TV Plus, you have Hulu, HBO Max, BBC's iPlayer, China also has ITV Hub, India has Hotstar, so there's a bunch of them. But then when you think about, the revenue that is being generated, from these video streaming apps, if you just look at the US market, last year alone, it was a $24 billion market. And by 2025, it's expected to be, well, not last year, but in 2020, it was 24 billion. And by 2025, it's supposed to be $42 billion. The same thing, you see across the pond in the UK. Um, I mean, it's not to that extent, obviously, because they're limited by the population. But in 2020, it was a 3 billion pound market, and it's expected to go up to 4.8 billion pounds, in 2025. The same kind of statistics are seen, all across the world, right? And now with data speeds increasing over time, the consumption has also increased over time. And let's not forget, COVID last year and the year before, I mean, just basically accelerated, the number of people who actually signed up for these services. But now I mean, when you do the cost benefit analysis, right, they're spending so much on content. I mean, let's take India for example. I mean, like 3, 4 years ago, Netflix or Amazon Prime, whatnot. I mean, they were just sitting and purchasing, old TV shows or old movies, and it's only now that they've actually become studios and they're investing in their own shows, very successful ones, I might add. But so the game has slightly shifted. But along with this, the amount of money that they actually spend in acquiring customers has also increased, and it's only going to keep increasing. So if you feel like you're enjoying that freemium subscription of yours, give it a couple years, and you're either going to move on to a bundle or pay as you go. And of course, when more and more, services come out into the market, churn is also something that these guys have to, manage. So in the past, if you saw, let's take Netflix for example. 10 years ago, the cost of acquiring a subscriber for Netflix was probably around 32 to $35. But now, if you look at that number, it has gone up significantly. So if you compare, if you take the US market alone, during the pandemic, I mean, they were spending over $200 to acquire a customer. One of the major reasons for that is because, they have about 75 to 80 million customers in the US already. So they've basically, kind of reached a plateau. So, and now with so many competing services coming in, at the end of the day, the bucket is pretty finite. So they're going to have to spend more and more money to acquire the same customer. And of course, churn is also a major concern. With in the beginning, everybody just put all their content on platforms like Netflix, and then when they realized the amount of money that was at stake, they decided to pull their content off Netflix and launch their own services, or their own platforms, I should say. So, right now, the cost of consumer acquisition in the US is being offset by the cost of consumer acquisition outside the US, where, if you see Asia, India, or the rest of the world for that matter, the average comes out to about $60, per customer. So it's still a significant amount of revenue that they're actually putting in. And if you look at the calculation, like the lifetime value of a customer that is actually coming on board, um, you're looking at a customer that's going to be spending a lifetime value of about 300 to $350. So the point is, they're spending about $60 to acquire a customer and generating about $360 from them. So a 1 is to 6 multiplier, so to speak, which is not bad. But then that number, that gap is going to decrease over time. Um, for the reason that I had mentioned earlier. So you're going to continue to see this trend where in the saturated markets, the cost of acquisition is going to keep going up significantly, and they're going to have to come up with different ideas. This whole freemium model or a bundle model where they're allowing you to watch, multiple types of packages and whatnot. That's going to happen. But then at the end of the day, everybody's fighting for the same piece of the pie. And now the other interesting dynamic is because people like different types of shows and not all of them are available on one platform anymore. You have people who have multiple subscriptions, but then as a result of that, the lifetime value of a customer on any of these platforms also reduces. So normally, and now I think one of the major issues that these platforms are facing is people sign up for them, because they're interested in watching, one particular series. They watch the series and then, they just get churned out of the system. And then, so don't forget when you're trying to acquire a customer, the moment they're out of your system, I mean, you're still spending that same $50 or $60 to, get them back in. This is also something, the Netflix model is kind of what Spotify is also, dealing with when it comes to the podcast and, when it comes to the music space. And if you look at their annual reports, I mean, they're no different. I mean, the amount of money that they're spending on content acquisition is insane. I think last year's report that I saw, they ended up spending close to, I think, like $6 billion. No, $1.9 billion, on content, and this is just music. It's not even video. So this kind of trend is going to continue to, this pattern is going to continue. There's no way around it. So there's also a reason why these guys are getting really creative in terms of coming up with the options to keep you in, right? I think in some cases, and depending on the spending power or the ARPU of the customer, in those countries, they're coming up with different rate cards, that suit them, like possibly a weekly model, possibly a monthly model. You get to see maybe old shows, for free. And then if you want to watch like the latest seasons, you got to sign up. So there's so many different, dynamics to it. But then the point of, this video was to kind of highlight the revenue that's actually being generated by these video streaming platforms, and the reason why all the major players are really hunkering down. And now with this whole metaverse thing, coming into the picture, you're also seeing studios, launch their movies online, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. So it's going to be very interesting on how, like, okay, there's going to come a point where, all the other countries where, people are finally coming online, will plateau at some point. But then it's going to be interesting to see how the countries that have already plateaued now, like the kind of options that they come up with, because that's going to set the tone for the rest of the places. So just some insights on this particular vertical. We'll find the next topic and see you in the next video. See ya.